Daniel Walsh wiped sweat from his brow as he sorted through boxes in his grandmother's attic in Louisville, Kentucky. The July heat made the cramped space nearly unbearable. 3 days after her funeral, the family had tasked him with clearing out her home of 60 years. "What's this?" he muttered, pulling a dusty, leather-bound book from beneath a stack of yellowed newspapers. The binding was cracked, but still intact. Opening it carefully, his eyes widened at the neat handwriting on the first page, "Property of Cassius Clay, Jr., 1964. Daniel's hands began to tremble. His grandmother, Martha Walsh, had worked as a cleaner at the training facility where Muhammad Ali, then still known as Cassius Clay, had prepared for some of his most legendary fights. Could this actually be Ali's personal diary? If this story has made you feel something already, however small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. As Daniel flipped through the pages, his heart raced. This wasn't just any diary. It contained Ali's most private thoughts during the pivotal year when he changed his name and announced his conversion to Islam, shocking America and transforming sports history forever. "Dad!" he called downstairs. "I think you need to see this." Thomas Walsh climbed the narrow attic stairs, his knees protesting each step. At 72, he remembered the young boxer who had set Louisville ablaze with pride. He took the diary with reverent hands. "Your grandmother never mentioned this," he whispered, carefully turning pages filled with Ali's thoughts about his faith, his fears, and his fight against systemic racism. "This is extraordinary." "Why would she keep something like this?" Daniel asked. Thomas settled onto an old trunk. "Martha was proud but private. She cleaned at that gym for 20 years. Ali must have left this behind, and she kept it safe all this time." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The diary sat on his nightstand, its presence almost electric in the darkness. He'd photographed several pages, reading Ali's words about his inner struggles, his controversial stance against the Vietnam War, and doubts he never revealed to the public. "I'm terrified," one entry read, "but a man who isn't afraid of anything isn't brave. He's foolish. Courage is facing your fears and standing your ground anyway." By morning, Daniel had made his decision. This diary belonged to history. "The handwriting analysis is conclusive," Dr. Eleanor Richards said, carefully placing the diary into a protective sleeve. As the head curator of sports memorabilia at the Kentucky Historical Society, she'd seen countless forgeries. "This is authentic." Muhammad Ali wrote these words. 3 weeks had passed since Daniel's discovery. Now, sitting in Dr. Richards' climate-controlled office, he watched her handle the diary with specialized gloves. "The historical significance is immeasurable," she continued, her voice betraying her excitement. "These entries reveal an intimate portrait of Ali during his most controversial period, when America turned against him for his religious conversion and his refusal to fight in Vietnam." Daniel nodded. "There's an entry from April 19th, 1967, the day he reported for induction into the armed forces and refused to step forward. He wrote about knowing he might lose everything." Dr. Richards looked up sharply. "That's not in any biography. May I see?" Daniel showed her the photograph on his phone. Ali had written, "Tomorrow I might lose my title, my money, maybe even my freedom. But I won't lose myself. I won't become what I don't believe in just because they tell me to." His public persona was always confident, almost untouchable, Dr. Richards mused. But here we see his vulnerability, his human side. The question is, what do you plan to do with this discovery? The answer wasn't simple. Museums had already reached out with offers. Sports memorabilia collectors had somehow gotten Daniel's number, proposing staggering sums. Even Hollywood producers were calling, seeing the cinematic potential of Ali's untold story. But something felt wrong about profiting from these private thoughts. "I think his family should see it first," Daniel said finally. "These words belong to his legacy before they belong to anyone else." That evening, Daniel found himself sitting across from Layla Ali, Muhammad's daughter, in a private meeting room at a downtown hotel. Her eyes, so like her father's, studied him with cautious interest. "Many people have claimed to have my father's personal items," she said carefully. "And what makes this different?" Daniel slid the protective folder across the table. "I didn't come here to sell anything. Ms. Ali, I believe this belongs to your family." As Layla opened the folder and saw her father's handwriting, her composed expression faltered. "This is his handwriting," she whispered, touching the page gently. "I'd know it anywhere." She turned to an entry from 1964, "Held my baby girl today, so small in my big hands." I told her, "You gonna be somebody. You gonna be free in ways your daddy couldn't be. I wonder what world she'll grow up in. Gotta make it better for her." Tears formed in Layla's eyes. "I never knew he wrote this." The press conference at the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville drew media from around the world. 6 months after Daniel's attic discovery, selected excerpts from the diary were being shared publicly for the first time, with the Ali family's blessing. CNN, BBC, ESPN, cameras flashed as Layla Ali addressed the assembled reporters. Daniel stood quietly to the side, still somewhat bewildered by the chain of events his discovery had triggered. "My father was known for his public words, his poetry, his proclamations, his principles," Layla began. "But these private words show the man behind the legend. They reveal his doubts, his faith, his love for his family and his people. They show the weight he carried when he stood against the Vietnam War and lost nearly 4 years of his boxing prime." The first public excerpt appeared on the screen behind her. Ali's reflection after being stripped of his heavyweight title. "They took my belt, but not my dignity. They took my license, but not my voice. Some call me traitor. History will decide who betrayed what America truly stands for." Social media exploded within minutes. Ali's diary became the top trending topic worldwide. Historians, celebrities, athletes, and ordinary people shared their reactions. The diary's revelations about Ali's struggles with racism, his spiritual journey, and his unwavering commitment to his principles resonated deeply in a divided America still wrestling with many of the same issues. What made the diary particularly powerful were entries showing Ali's human side, his insecurities about his education, his regrets about his first marriage, his fears about whether history would understand his choices. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing," he had written in 1967. "Then I remember my grandpappy, born a slave, and how he'd look at me now. Can't go backward. Won't go backward." Within days, documentary filmmakers, publishers, and museum curators were contacting the Ali family. The diary had ignited a renewed interest in Ali's legacy, particularly among younger generations, discovering his story through his own private words. For Daniel, the experience was surreal. He'd appeared on national morning shows, been interviewed by sports networks, and received letters from people around the world thanking him for bringing Ali's words to light. "I never expected any of this," he told a reporter from the New York Times. "I'm just glad these words found their way home." But the most profound moment came when an elderly man approached him after the press conference. "I protested against Ali back in '67, the man said, his voice cracking. "Thought he was unpatriotic, reading his private thoughts now. I wish I could tell him I was wrong. I wish I'd understood then what I understand now." 1 year after the diary's discovery, Daniel stood in the newly opened The Inner Champion exhibit at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. Behind protective glass, Ali's diary was displayed alongside photographs, news clippings, and interactive displays that contextualized his words. The diary had become more than a historical artifact. It had sparked a national conversation about courage, conviction, and the true meaning of patriotism. Schools had incorporated Ali's writings into their curricula. A new generation was discovering the complexity behind the iconic figure. Watching visitors move through the exhibit, Daniel reflected on how differently things might have turned out. His grandmother could have thrown the diary away while cleaning the gym. It could have deteriorated in her attic over decades. He himself could have sold it to the highest bidder. "It belongs to history now," said a voice beside him. Layla Ali had joined him, watching as a group of schoolchildren gathered around the diary display. "Your father's words are reaching people who weren't even born when he was fighting," Daniel observed. Layla nodded. "That's what he would have wanted. Dad always said his greatest fight wasn't in the ring. It was standing up for what he believed in when it cost him everything." They watched as a museum guide read from one of the diary's most powerful entries. "They ask why I don't just shut up and box, because a champion's job isn't just winning fights in the ring. It's fighting wrongs outside it. If I can't use my voice for those who don't have one, what good is having it?" The children listened, captivated by words written before their parents were born, yet still resonating with truth. Later that evening, at a small dinner celebrating the exhibit's opening, historians, athletes, and civil rights leaders gathered to discuss Ali's legacy. The diary had added new dimensions to their understanding of a man who had already been analyzed from every angle. "We thought we knew everything about the greatest," said one sports historian. But these private reflections reveal the human being behind the mythology, a man wrestling with his faith, his fame, and his responsibility to use his platform for change." As the night concluded, Daniel found himself alone with Thomas, his father, looking at old photographs of their grandmother, Martha. "Do you think she knew what she was preserving?" Daniel asked. Thomas smiled. "Martha wasn't one for the spotlight, but she believed in doing the right thing quietly. Maybe she kept that diary knowing someday the world would be ready to truly hear what Ali was saying." Outside, the Washington Monument stood illuminated against the night sky. Somewhere in that city, a piece of paper with a young boxer's handwriting was helping Americans reflect on their history and themselves. "In my final fight," Ali had written in one of his last entries, "it won't matter how many punches I threw or titles I won. What will matter is whether I made a difference, whether I stood for something more than just myself." Thanks to a diary found in an attic and a family's decision to share rather than sell, the answer was now clearer than ever. If you've made it this far and felt every word, won't you leave without subscribing? I tell these stories with my heart in my hand, to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who live. If this truly touched you, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.